The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council floated above the clouds of Varnis Prime, a massive marble world that had served as the Empire's heart for 10,000 years. The chamber itself was a monument to power. Columns made of black obsidian rose a mile high, shimmering with symbols of past conquests. Every species in the known galaxy had at least one representative there, though none dared speak unless spoken to. Today the silence was absolute. At the center of the hall, standing on a golden platform, surrounded by shimmering holograms of stars and burning worlds, was the Emperor himself. He was ancient, tall, wrapped in robes that glowed faintly like molten metal. His voice carried through the air like thunder rolling through deep caverns. "The species called humanity," he began, his voice cold and deliberate, "has refused the will of the Galactic Empire. They have rejected the tribute, defied the decree, and insulted the crown of stars." Every eye turned toward the far side of the chamber, where one small figure stood alone, a man in a dark suit, hands folded calmly before him. The only human in the room. "For this," the Emperor continued, his golden eyes burning brighter, "we declare war." Gasps echoed through the assembly. Hundreds of alien voices began to hiss, whisper, shout. Generals leaned toward their aides, their crests and tendrils twitching with amusement. Some laughed openly. Others exchanged cruel smiles. "War? Against the humans?" One alien lord scoffed. "They've barely joined the council. They still burn coal on half their world." Another sneered. "Primitive little death worlders. 3 rotations," an admiral murmured confidently. "Their cities will fall in 3 rotations." But amid the storm of noise and arrogance, one man remained perfectly still, Ambassador Jack Harper. Earth's representative didn't flinch, didn't even blink. He stood as if the Emperor's words were a mild inconvenience, rather than the formal declaration of humanity's destruction. He reached into his jacket pocket. Every eye turned toward him. The guards tensed. The Council's sentinels aimed their plasma rifles, thinking perhaps the human would panic or beg. But instead, Jack Harper pulled out a small silver lighter. With a click, a small flame flickered to life, tiny and defiant in the grand cold light of the hall. He raised it slowly, touched the flame to a cigarette resting between his lips, and inhaled. The sound of the lighter snapping shut was louder than a gunshot in the silence that followed. He let out a slow breath of smoke. The faint trail curled into the air, forming soft spirals against the sterile light of the chamber. His eyes, grey and tired but unyielding, lifted to meet the Emperor's gaze. "How you can declare whatever you want," Jack said quietly. "But you have no idea what you just started." The chamber froze. Even the Emperor hesitated. The aliens looked between each other, unsure if they had just witnessed bravery or madness. Somewhere in the back, a nervous laugh broke the silence, quickly silenced by a guard's glare. Jack Harper didn't care. He pocketed the lighter, adjusted his collar, and stood there like a man at peace with the coming storm. The Emperor's voice finally returned, lower, colder. "You dare threaten the Galactic Empire?" "No," Jack replied, smoke curling from his lips. "I'm just warning you." Then he turned and walked out. The hall erupted into chaos. As Jack's footsteps faded, the Council's grand doors sealed behind him with a hiss. The Emperor turned to his generals. "Destroy them," he commanded. "Burn their world. Erase their name from history." The generals bowed deeply. "It will be done, Your Majesty." But far away, across the stars, those words were already being recorded, analyzed and sent to Earth. That night, under the cold light of Lunar Base, Admiral Reyes watched the transmission on a holoscreen. Around him, the command deck was silent. When Harper's image appeared, calm, composed, and smoking, the officers exchanged uneasy glances. Did he really say that? One whispered. Reyes smiled faintly. "Yeah, that's Harper for you. Man's got a death wish, or a plan." The Admiral leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the words, "Galactic Empire Declares War." "Then let's make sure they regret it." For 10,000 years, the Galactic Empire had ruled without challenge. They had crushed hundreds of rebellions, enslaved entire planets, and rewritten history to erase the names of those who resisted. No one defied them. No one survived long enough to try until now. Humanity was young by galactic standards, barely 2 centuries into interstellar travel. But they were stubborn, unpredictable, and forged in endless struggle. Their history was full of wars, revolutions, and near extinction. Yet every time they came back stronger. To the Empire, Earth was an upstart world, rich in ambition but weak in power. To Jack Harper, it was something far more dangerous, a world that had nothing to lose. Across the galaxy, alien analysts mocked humanity's courage, calling it foolishness. But a few, those who had studied human behavior closely, began to whisper warnings. "They don't fight like us," said one Varnian scholar. "They fight until there's nothing left to burn. And if they win," another asked, "then the galaxy will never be the same." Back in his quarters aboard the human diplomatic vessel Odyssey, Jack Harper sat by the window, watching the stars drift by. He flicked ash into a tray, the ember lighting his face in the dark. He knew what would come next: fleets, invasions, terror. But he also knew something the aliens didn't. Humanity wasn't afraid of war. War was their oldest teacher. He looked out at the stars and murmured quietly to himself, "They think they've declared war on humans. But they've really declared war on survival itself." The stars twinkled back, cold, bright and endless. And somewhere deep in that darkness, Earth was already waking up, preparing, waiting. The smirk still lingered on Jack Harper's lips. Because he knew the truth. The galaxy had just made its last mistake. The Galactic Empire did not waste time. Within hours of the declaration, massive fleets began to mobilize from the Imperial core worlds. Their banners, golden suns surrounded by crimson rings, filled the skies of shipyards that stretched across moons and stations. Entire systems echoed with the thunder of engines as battleships, dreadnoughts and carriers prepared for what they believed would be a quick, glorious campaign. To them, Earth was nothing more than a rebellious outpost of savages. The Emperor's words had already been broadcast across the stars: erase their world, burn their oceans and leave their ashes as a warning. The aliens cheered. Victory, they thought, was certain. But on the quiet side of the galaxy, far from the Empire's grand halls, a different kind of silence was forming, the silence of human preparation. In the dark vacuum around the moon, a fleet gathered in secret. Thousands of grey ships hung in formation, their hulls blackened to absorb light. There were no banners, no grand speeches, just men and women in cold metal rooms waiting for orders. Admiral Reyes stood on the bridge of the UHS Valiant, staring at a hologram of the solar system. His face was lined with age and exhaustion, but his eyes were sharp. "They'll strike first," he said quietly. "They always do." His second-in-command, Commander Hale, nodded. "And when they come?" Reyes smiled faintly. "We make sure none of them leave." Beneath the command decks, technicians moved through narrow corridors, loading missiles and calibrating railguns. Artificial intelligence systems whispered through the ship's network, analyzing enemy patterns, calculating probabilities. They all knew what was coming. They all knew humanity had never faced an enemy this powerful before. Yet no one was afraid. Humanity had been forged in chaos: wars, famine, extinction, and rebirth. Fear was an old friend. Somewhere deep in space, Jack Harper watched the Imperial fleets advance on long-range scanners. He sat in his small diplomatic vessel, still wearing his black suit, still smoking. Messages from Earth filled the screen. Orders, warnings, calls for his return, but he ignored them all. He was waiting for the moment when the Empire would make its move. And when it came, he intended to be there to watch the first spark. The first Imperial attack fleet entered the solar system near Jupiter. 2,000 ships, sleek and silver, moving in perfect formation. Their weapons glowed faintly, ready to burn planets. Their commander, Grand Admiral Kor, sneered as he saw the empty void before him. "No resistance detected," his aide reported. "Typical," Kor said. "They're hiding behind their moon, no doubt." He gave the order to advance. But as the Imperial ships moved closer to Jupiter, strange signals began to appear. Faint blips, ghost readings, static interference. "Ignore it," Kor said. "They're trying to jam us." Yet moments later, one of his cruisers vanished. Then another. Then another. No explosions, no warnings, just gone. Panic spread through the fleet. "Multiple losses, sir." "Unknown weapon signatures." "Where are they coming from?" Kor shouted. The sensors screamed with noise. Out of the shadow of Jupiter, human ships emerged, sleek, silent, black as void. No heat signatures, no transmissions, no mercy. They fired kinetic rods traveling at near light speed, tearing through Imperial hulls like paper. The first battle of the war had begun. The Empire's fleet tried to fight back, but they were blind. Railgun rounds ripped through their command ships before orders could be sent. Explosions bloomed like blue suns across the dark sky. Within minutes, the proud fleet of the Empire was shattered. Admiral Reyes watched from his command chair aboard the Valiant, his voice steady as he gave orders. Target their engines. Leave one alive. The bridge crew obeyed without hesitation. When the last of the enemy's guns went silent, Reyes leaned forward. Send a message, and he said, "Tell them this. You wanted war, you got it." The lone surviving Imperial ship fled at light speed, carrying with it the story of defeat. Across the galaxy, that story spread like wildfire. Worlds that had mocked humanity began to whisper in fear. The Empire's propaganda machines tried to hide the loss, but rumors couldn't be contained. The humans had destroyed 2,000 ships, without losing one of their own. In the Emperor's palace, the news was met with rage. "Impossible!" he roared, crushing a data crystal in his hand. No primitive world could do this. His advisors bowed low, trembling. "Majesty, we underestimated them. Their weapons, enough!" The Emperor snapped. "If they want war, we will show them war. Prepare the Second Fleet." But even as he spoke, more reports came in. Imperial patrols vanishing, shipyards under attack, unknown ships appearing in deep space, striking, then disappearing. The Empire was no longer hunting humanity. Humanity was hunting them. On the far edge of known space, Jack Harper watched the chaos unfold through intercepted transmissions. He leaned back, a faint smile curling at his lips. He flicked the ash from his cigarette and whispered to no one in particular, "They still don't get it." Outside his window, the stars burned brighter, their light reflecting in his eyes. "We don't fight for conquest," he murmured. "We fight to finish what others start." He stood, walked toward the command deck, and gave a single order to his pilot. "Set course for Earth. The real war's about to begin." The Imperial fleet arrived at Jupiter expecting a quick and glorious victory. 2,000 ships glided through the void in perfect formation, their golden hulls gleaming against the planet's swirling red storms. Commanders barked orders in dozens of alien tongues, confident that humanity's resistance would crumble the moment their cannons fired. Grand Admiral Kor, seated in his throne-like command chair aboard the dreadnought Sovereign Flame, smiled coldly. "Bring me Earth's surrender," he said, his voice sharp as glass. His officers bowed, believing the human homeworld would soon burn. But space around Jupiter was too quiet. No signals, no defense lines, not even satellites. The humans had vanished. The fleet advanced slowly, scanners sweeping for movement. "Nothing on long-range sensors," reported one lieutenant. "They must be hiding behind the moons." Kor leaned forward. "Then flush them out. Fire a plasma barrage at Io. Leave nothing standing." A moment later, beams of blue energy shot from 100 ships, cutting across space and striking the volcanic moon. The surface exploded in waves of molten fire, ash and rock scattering into orbit. The fleet cheered, confident they had wiped out a human base. But then the radar alarms began to scream. Blips appeared from every direction, hundreds of them, moving fast and silent. "Unknown contacts!" "Closing in!" shouted a sensor officer. "Where?" Kor demanded. "Everywhere." The lights flickered. In the vast emptiness of space, invisible streaks of metal tore through the fleet at near light speed. One Imperial cruiser vanished in an instant, its hull sliced clean in half. Another erupted into a silent blossom of fire as kinetic rods pierced its reactor. The Admiral's screen filled with static and chaos. "We're under attack. Multiple losses. Identify them!" Kor shouted. "What are we fighting?" But before anyone could answer, a massive dark shape emerged from Jupiter's shadow. A colossal human warship, black as night, its hull absorbing all light. The words UHS Valiant glowed faintly along its side. Admiral Reyes stood on its bridge, calm and unshaken. "They came to hunt us," he said. "Now they're the prey." He gave the order. "Fire all batteries!" From behind the Valiant, dozens of human warships appeared, sleek and silent, their railguns flashing white. The void erupted in streaks of destruction. The Imperial fleet disintegrated as hypervelocity slugs ripped through their armor. The aliens fired back, but their plasma bolts hit nothing. The humans moved too fast, their ships phasing between electronic shadows, invisible to sensors. "We can't lock onto them," screamed an Imperial officer. "Our targeting systems are blind." "Then fire at random," Kor yelled, but it was useless. The humans had turned the battlefield into a slaughterhouse. Explosions filled the sky like dying stars. Jupiter's upper atmosphere ignited with debris as burning fragments rained into its stormy clouds. The planet itself seemed to roar as wreckage plunged into its endless vortex. "Ceasefire," Reyes ordered. The guns went silent. The space around Jupiter was now littered with the remains of the Empire's finest fleet. Only one ship still floated, its engines crippled, its weapons destroyed. Reyes turned to his officers. "Send them a message." A communications officer nodded. Moments later, a transmission was sent to the surviving Imperial vessel. The message was simple. "Tell your Emperor Earth fights back." The ship jumped to lightspeed, carrying the tale of defeat across the galaxy. On board the Valiant, the crew stood in silence, staring at the burning wreckage. Commander Hale broke the quiet. "That was 2,000 ships, sir." "And they'll send 2,000 more," Reyes said. "Good, we'll be ready." Meanwhile, far away on Varnis Prime, the Emperor's throne room erupted with rage as he watched the intercepted recordings. The once proud fleet was gone. "Impossible!" he shouted, his voice shaking the walls. "How could primitives destroy my armada?" His advisors trembled. "Majesty, the humans, their technology is unlike anything we've seen. Their ships—" "Silence!" the Emperor roared. "If they wish for annihilation, I will give it to them." He turned to his warlords. "Prepare the Grand Armada. Erase their world. I want nothing left but dust." Across the stars, the order spread. Worlds that had once mocked humanity began to whisper in fear. Merchants cancelled trade routes to the Sol system. Even the neutral planets went silent. No one dared contact Earth. They had seen what happened at Jupiter. They had seen the Empire bleed. On board his small diplomatic vessel, Jack Harper watched the battle recordings replayed on a holo display. The human fleet cutting through Imperial ships, the planet burning red and gold, the silence afterward. He took a long drag from his cigarette and exhaled slowly. "Beautiful," he murmured. "They wanted a show of strength. They got one." His pilot glanced back nervously. "Sir, the Empire will retaliate. They'll come for Earth." Jack nodded. "Let them. They think this was a victory for us." He smiled faintly, flicking ash into a tray. But this was just a message. Outside his window, the shattered remains of Jupiter's orbit sparkled like distant fireworks. The galaxy had just witnessed something it had never seen before, an empire humiliated. And somewhere in the endless dark, humanity's name was being spoken not with laughter, but with fear. The news of Jupiter spread like wildfire across the stars. The invincible Galactic Empire had been defeated for the first time in 10,000 years. Entire fleets destroyed by a species the Empire had called primitive. Whispers began in the shadows of alien markets, in the halls of conquered worlds, and even among Imperial soldiers themselves. "The humans did it," they said. "They killed the Emperor's fleet." Fear was something the Empire had forgotten, but now it began to return. The Emperor himself sat on his obsidian throne, his golden eyes burning with fury. The council chamber trembled as he slammed his clawed hand down. "You will not speak of defeat," he thundered. "You will not utter that name, humanity, in my presence again." But even as he roared, the truth could not be silenced. His closest advisors exchanged terrified glances. One of them, a thin and cautious alien, finally dared to speak. "Your Majesty, our subjects have seen the footage. Entire systems are questioning our strength. If we do not strike back swiftly, rebellion could—" "Enough!" the Emperor snapped. "Prepare Operation Solar Cleansing. I want Earth turned to glass. I want their sun to burn with the ashes of their arrogance." Across the Empire, trillions of tons of war material began to move. Shipyards produced dreadnoughts faster than ever before. Massive fleets assembled near the core systems, forming a wall of steel and fire. Every loyal planet was ordered to contribute ships, soldiers, and supplies. Soon the largest military force in history was gathering, all to crush one small blue world. While the Empire prepared its vengeance, humanity was not idle. On the moon, deep beneath the surface, the command center of Earth's defense forces came alive. Massive screens flickered with data, showing Imperial fleet formations, supply lines, and predicted attack routes. Admiral Reyes stood before them, calm as always. "They're coming with everything they've got," said Commander Hale, her voice tight. "How long until they reach the solar border?" 4 days, Reyes said. "Plenty of time. Plenty?" she asked in disbelief. Reyes looked over his shoulder, eyes cold and steady. "For us, that's a lifetime." All across Earth's orbit, fleets moved into hidden positions. Orbital platforms powered up railguns the size of skyscrapers. Defense. Satellites awakened after years of silence. Deep space mines floated unseen beyond Neptune, waiting for the moment to strike. Every continent on Earth was on alert. Civilians were evacuated underground, the skies filled with drones and shuttles, and every soldier on Earth knew what was coming. Humanity had no illusions. This war was not about territory, it was survival. Jack Harper returned from the diplomatic front lines, stepping onto the command deck of the Valiant. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes heavy, but his voice was steady. "The Empire will hit us hard," he said. "But we're going to hit back harder." Reyes gave a faint nod. "Good to have you back, Ambassador." "Don't call me that," Harper replied. "Diplomacy's over." Beyond the solar system, the first Imperial scouting fleets began to vanish. Human stealth ships ambushed them in the dark, cutting supply routes and hijacking data streams. Every move the Empire made was already known to Earth's commanders. On Varnis Prime, panic began to ripple through the military command. "How are they doing this?" An admiral shouted. "They're a single world, a single species." The Emperor's answer was ice cold. "Then destroy their world, end their species." Days later, the Empire's Grand Armada departed its homeworlds, tens of thousands of ships stretching across light years. Planets dimmed as their energy was drained to power the fleet. It was the largest force ever assembled in the galaxy's history. Yet even as it moved toward Earth, strange reports continued to arrive. Imperial colonies under attack. Resource convoys vanishing. Shipyards destroyed. The Emperor refused to believe it. "Human propaganda," he growled. But the truth was far worse. Project Helios had begun. From the outer edges of known space, human fleets began emerging through newly built wormhole gates. No one had known these gates existed. They appeared suddenly, glowing red and gold, and from them poured black ships bearing the insignia of Earth. Within hours, human forces struck at the Empire's most vital worlds, communication hubs, logistics centers, and weapons foundries. Entire systems went dark. "How are they everywhere at once?" cried a panicked governor before his city was vaporized from orbit. In just one galactic cycle, the humans had turned the Empire's strength against itself. They didn't fight for territory, they fought to cripple. They fought to send a message: you are not untouchable. Back on the Valiant, Reyes watched the reports roll in, his voice quiet. "They're learning what happens when you corner humanity." Jack Harper stood beside him, staring at the stars. "They wanted revenge," he said, lighting another cigarette. "But what they'll get is a lesson." Reyes raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" Harper exhaled a slow trail of smoke. "Never declare war on the species that taught itself to survive extinction." Far away, the Emperor stared out at the distant stars, unaware that his empire was already dying from within. The humans were not fighting like conquerors, they were fighting like predators. And soon the galaxy would learn that the fire of Earth could not be extinguished. Across the galaxy, the impossible was happening. The once unstoppable Galactic Empire was beginning to fracture. News of Earth's counterattack spread faster than the Imperial censors could silence it. Planet after planet whispered the same words: "The humans are winning." For 10,000 years, the Empire had ruled through fear. Their power had seemed eternal, their armies invincible. But fear was breaking, replaced by something far more dangerous: hope. On 1,000 worlds, slaves and workers looked up at the night sky and dreamed of freedom. And on every world where humans struck, the people saw the same thing: humanity did not come to conquer. They came to liberate. Admiral Reyes's fleet moved like a storm, striking deep into Imperial space. Communication hubs were shattered, supply lines severed, and shipyards burned in silence. Each battle ended the same way: swift, precise, and merciless. Yet after every victory, human ships dropped aid pods and medical supplies to the surviving civilians. For the first time in centuries, conquered species saw soldiers who didn't demand tribute or obedience. They offered food, medicine, and help. A child on the planet Therin would later remember the sight forever. A human marine, battle-scarred and tired, kneeling to hand her a ration pack instead of a weapon. "Why?" she had asked in her trembling voice. The soldier had smiled faintly. "Because that's what we fight for." Word of this spread like wildfire. Entire systems began to rebel. Factories once building imperial warships turned on their overseers. Governors fled their posts. Armies deserted. Humanity's defiance had ignited a revolution across the stars. On Varnis Prime, the Emperor watched his empire crumble. Reports poured in hourly. Uprisings, sabotage, assassinations. The once proud Imperial Guard now fought its own people in the streets. The Emperor's face twisted in rage as he crushed another data crystal in his hand. "They were supposed to be primitives," he snarled. "How do they do this?" His advisors said nothing. None dared. The truth was simple. Humanity had changed the rules of war. They didn't fight for territory or glory. They fought for ideals, freedom, survival, and the right to stand unbowed. Their courage infected others. The Emperor turned to his warlords, his voice trembling with fury. "Kill their symbol. Find this Ambassador Harper. Bring me his head." Assassins were sent across the galaxy. They infiltrated human bases, ambushed convoys, and attacked relay stations. But Jack Harper was never where they expected him. He moved through shadows, always one step ahead. On the dark side of a ruined moon, one of the assassins finally found him, only to end up staring down the barrel of a human sidearm. "Tell your Emperor," Harper said, calm as ever, "I'm not the symbol he should fear." The assassin managed a confused whisper. "Then what is?" Harper smiled faintly. "Every human who just realized they don't need permission to fight back." The assassin didn't live long enough to report back. Meanwhile, in orbit above a liberated world, Admiral Reyes addressed his crew. The room was filled with silence as holograms of burning imperial cities flickered around them. "We didn't ask for this war," he said. "But if this is the cost of freedom, we'll pay it. We won't rule them. We'll show them what freedom looks like and let them decide." The crew nodded. Humanity wasn't building an empire. They were building an idea. Across the stars, alien fleets that had once served the Emperor began switching sides. Old rivals united under a single banner, the United World's Resistance. And at the center of it all stood humanity, the species the galaxy once mocked. On the outer rim, a massive battle erupted above the world of Varnis Beta, the Empire's primary shipyard planet. Hundreds of Imperial dreadnoughts met humanity's fleet head-on. The sky turned into a storm of plasma and railgun fire. For hours the battle raged. When it ended, the human flag floated above the ruins of the shipyards. Billions watched the broadcast across the galaxy. The Empire's symbol was falling, one world at a time. Back on the human flagship, Jack Harper stood on the observation deck, the faint glow of Varnis Beta reflecting in his eyes. "The Emperor thought strength came from fear," he said quietly. "But strength comes from something else entirely." "From what?" asked Commander Hale beside him. "From the will to stand when the universe tells you to kneel." Far away on the Imperial homeworld, rebellion had reached the palace gates. The Emperor looked out his window and saw the fires of his own people rising against him. His empire, built on fear, was collapsing under its own weight. And the man who had once smirked in his council chamber, the human who lit his cigarette under the glare of 1,000 alien eyes, had become the spark that burned 1,000 years of tyranny to ash. The galaxy would never be the same again. The once glorious capital of the Galactic Empire was now a dying world. Firestorms raged across the marble spires that once touched the clouds. Black smoke spiraled into the void as rebel fleets clashed with Imperial loyalists in orbit. The people, long enslaved by fear, now filled the streets with weapons stolen from fallen guards. The Emperor's voice echoed through the shattered halls of his palace, a roar of fury and disbelief. 10,000 years of rule, ended by animals from a backwater world. He struck the console beside his throne, shattering it with a spark. His ministers lay dead at his feet, executed for failure. The massive golden banners of the Empire hung torn and burning behind him. Outside, the thunder of battle grew closer. Human ships had entered the system. The war that began with a single smirk was about to end with a storm. In orbit, Admiral Reyes watched the world spin below, a bleeding jewel in the dark. "Target locked," reported the tactical officer. Reyes's expression was grim. "No bombardment. We take the capital alive." Harper's orders. The human fleet broke into formation, sleek gunmetal ships cutting through debris like blades. Drop pods launched, streaking through the atmosphere in waves of fire. Each carried soldiers, marines, and mech units, all silent or resolute. On the surface, Ambassador Jack Harper walked through the ruins beside a small team of armored soldiers. He carried no weapon, only his old lighter and a data pad. "This is madness," muttered Commander Hale beside him. "The Emperor will kill you the moment he sees you." Harper lit his cigarette and exhaled softly. "That's the plan," he said. "He needs to see the face of the species that ended him." They moved through burning courtyards, past shattered statues of ancient emperors. The palace gates loomed ahead, massive steel doors now half melted from plasma fire. Beyond them waited the last of the Imperial Guard, elite soldiers in black armor with glowing red visors. "Surrender," one of them shouted. Harper didn't answer. The human Marines opened fire. The battle was short, brutal, and final. When the smoke cleared, the guards lay silent, and the great doors groaned open. Inside the throne room, the Emperor stood alone. His golden armor was cracked and scorched, his crown tarnished. He held a plasma blade in one hand and stared at Harper as if he were looking at a ghost. "You!" the Emperor hissed. "The insolent little creature who mocked me in my own hall." Harper stepped forward slowly, his boots echoing across the marble. "That's right," he said calmly. "And you still don't understand why you lost." The Emperor raised his blade. "You think your machines and your tricks make you superior. You're just savages wrapped in steel." Harper took a long drag from his cigarette and met the Emperor's furious gaze. "Maybe," he said, "but we never forgot what fear feels like. You ruled with it. We learned to live through it." The Emperor lunged, blade slicing through the air, but Harper didn't move. Before the strike could land, 3 plasma rounds hit the Emperor's chest, fired from Hale's rifle behind him. The Emperor staggered, gasping, his weapon falling from his hand. He dropped to his knees, looking up at the man who defied him. This isn't how it ends," he rasped. Harper crouched beside him, flicking ash from his cigarette. "It's exactly how it ends," he said quietly. "Not with glory, not with power, just the truth catching up to you." The Emperor tried to speak, but no words came. His body slumped, armor clattering across the floor. The throne room fell silent, except for the crackle of distant fire. Harper looked at the empty golden throne, the symbol of 10 millennia of tyranny. Then he turned away. "We're done here," he said softly. Outside, the human flag was raised over the capital. The people of the Empire, free at last, cheered across the burning city. In orbit, the fleet stood down. Across the galaxy, the signal was broadcast live. "The Empire has fallen." On 1,000 worlds, fireworks lit the skies, and people wept with joy. Yet Harper didn't celebrate. He stood on a balcony, staring into the dark horizon. "We didn't win because we were stronger," he said quietly to Hale. "We won because we remembered who we were." "And who's that?" Hale asked. Harper smiled faintly, smoke curling in the wind. "The species that never kneels." As the dawn rose over the ruined capital, the first light in centuries broke through the smog. The Galactic Empire was gone. In its place, a new chapter of the galaxy was about to begin, one shaped not by fear but by the will of humanity. But far beyond the stars, in the void no human had yet reached, something else was watching. And as Harper's cigarette burned to ash, the next war was already awakening. Peace was supposed to come after the fall of the Empire. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy was free. But peace, like victory, was fragile. Weeks after the Emperor's death, the old imperial world struggled to rebuild. Riots broke out between rival factions. New leaders rose claiming to represent the will of the people, yet their banners looked hauntingly familiar. In the shadows, something stirred. Jack Harper stood aboard the dauntless humanity's flagship, staring at the galaxy map projected before him. Hundreds of systems glowed in new colors, signifying liberation. Yet one cluster blinked red, uncharted space beyond the former imperial rim. Reports had arrived of missing ships, vanished colonies, and strange energy signals. "Pirates?" asked Commander Hale. "No," Harper said quietly. "Something worse." Admiral Reyes entered the command deck, his uniform scorched from endless campaigns. "We picked up a transmission," he said. "It's old, centuries old, but it's repeating. Some kind of distress call." Harper frowned. "From who?" Reyes hesitated. Not human, not imperial. It predates both. The air seemed colder as the message echoed through the room, a broken metallic voice speaking in an unknown language filled with static and fear. "Whatever it is," Harper said finally, "it's coming from the outer void." Reyes studied him carefully. "You think it's a threat?" Harper exhaled smoke slowly. "Everything out there is a threat. But this one feels like it's been waiting." Meanwhile, across liberated space, rumors spread of ghost fleets seen on the edges of known territory, massive ships with no transponders, moving silently between stars. Miners vanished from asteroid belts. Entire outposts stopped responding. The newly formed Galactic Council, built from the ashes of the Empire, met in emergency session. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the Grand Chamber once again, but now they turned to the human ambassador with wary respect. "Ambassador Harper," the chairwoman said, "is it true that something has survived beyond the rim?" Harper didn't answer immediately. He looked around the chamber, the same place where not long ago the Emperor had declared war on humanity. Now the galaxy waited for him to speak. "The Empire wasn't the first to rule these stars," he said finally. "And it may not have been the last." Silence followed. "We will investigate," Harper continued. "But if this is what I think it is, then we're standing at the edge of something older and far darker than any of us." Back aboard the Dauntless, the crew prepared for the longest mission humanity had ever attempted, a journey into uncharted space. Reyes's fleet formed a spearhead, supported by allied ships from a dozen liberated worlds. Engineers whispered about what they'd find: ancient weapons, lost civilizations, maybe even the origin of the Empire itself. On the eve of departure, Harper stood alone in his quarters. He opened a small metal box and took out a worn photograph. Earth, blue and distant, the planet that had defied an empire. He smiled faintly and pocketed it. "Let's see what's out there," he murmured. The fleet jumped to FTL, leaving behind a trail of light that faded into darkness. Days passed in silence. Then on the 7th day they found it. A derelict structure the size of a moon floating in the void. Its surface was black as glass, absorbing every ray of light. Scanners failed to penetrate its hull. No signs of life. No power, just silence. Reyes ordered a boarding team. Harper insisted on going. Inside, the corridors were cold and perfectly preserved, lined with symbols no one could translate. It wasn't a station, it was a tomb. "This place is older than the Empire," whispered Hale, her voice echoing through the comms. "Older than any civilization we know." In the central chamber, they found what looked like a throne carved from obsidian, surrounded by empty armor suits twice the height of a human. The armor wasn't decayed, it was waiting. As Harper approached, the suits suddenly flickered with red light. One by one, their eyes ignited. "Fall back," shouted Reyes, but it was too late. The structure came alive, energy surging through its core. The tomb wasn't abandoned, it was awakening. The walls trembled as deep mechanical voices echoed in an ancient language that made every translator fail. Then, through static, one word came clear in every tongue: return. The fleet outside detected movement, massive shapes emerging from the void, each larger than a battleship, each broadcasting the same ancient signal. Harper stood in the chamber, eyes wide. "They're not ghosts," he whispered. "They're the ones who built the first empire." The humans had destroyed tyranny, but in doing so they had stirred something far older, something that remembered when the galaxy belonged to them. And now, after 10,000 years of silence, they were coming back. The void burned with crimson light as the ancient fleet emerged from darkness. Their ships were silent, smooth, and impossibly vast, machines older than recorded time. Every scanner failed, every weapon went cold. On the Dauntless, alarms screamed as energy readings spiked beyond measurable limits. "What are they?" Hale whispered. Harper stared at the hologram, hundreds of unknown vessels forming a perfect formation. "Not what," he said quietly. "Who?" The transmission repeated, clearer now, echoing across every channel in the galaxy. "Return to order." Admiral Reyes turned to Harper. "They think the galaxy still belongs to them." Harper lit his cigarette, smoke curling in the dim light. "Then they're about to learn what replaced them." Outside, human and alien fleets formed a wall of firepower. Engines roared, shields glowed, and every gun pointed toward the ancient threat. Harper watched through the viewport, his voice steady. "We fought one empire," he said. Now we fight the first. The fleet surged forward, light meeting darkness, freedom meeting eternity. And as the stars themselves seemed to tremble, one truth echoed across the cosmos: humanity would never kneel again.